One thing I think is really interesting too is like it kind of ties back into like the manipulation over time and the finding of desirable traits is trying to manage these genetics through the lens of time and the cultural position of where we were as a civilization at a time. Because if you think about, and I've heard this story from Todd, and it's I think it's great that we have this conversation about land races, and Todd's our reference. I think that's great.
We should have brought him into this conversation.
Great.
Maybe a part
I got
two.
his number.
Part
I got
two.
to hit him up. Yeah,
Part two.
we'll have to-
He has already said many times he would love to come on the show. You know, it's like the 60s and 70s, for example. And I remember I was talking about that timeline where it's like we took C and D genetics and we ran with those ones, and then we incorporated a B. But it's like, but then the 60s and the 70s came around, and then you had essentially prohibition of where it was massive crackdown. Home growers were getting busted. The war on drugs, thanks to Nixon and Nancy
and the Reagans.
In the Reagan, yeah, Nancy Reagan, right?
Yep.
Yeah. People were breeding out the abundant smell of skunk, and so that was so naturally people couldn't smell the stuff that was coming from your house or your operation, and you weren't getting busted. So for a time, for probably a couple decades, skunk was removed from the equation. And so if you're breeding anything that's tied to that time, you might not even have the characteristic of the skunk
You
that's
can't even get
in
access
that
it.
lineage. It's gone. They took the smell out of it. So it's like the fabric of time through where we are as a civilization has a huge impact of what we have the ability to do. We talk about tissue culture. We think, wonder if Todd kept that. No, of course he didn't. He come from a time of tissue culture.
That's a new thing.
That's new science. That's a new ability that now our culture and our civilization is able to do, that will now hopefully start that trace, that lineage, that family tree of these genetics where we can say, yeah,
23andMe.
this is it. That's it. Yeah, your little
If
heritage.
I can take a snip and find out if it's a male or female, if it has HLVD, there's got to be a way to find a genetic code makeup.
Well, why
know?
can't we go to the Hindu Kush Mountains? Let's go
Let's head out
and
there.
go grab some Hindu Kush, grab its genetic, test it. Should we not then be able to test any other genetic to see if there's a genetic makeup or DNA match?
Well, I
of
think this
any
is
kind?
where your cannabinoid testing, your terpene testing, where like it'll change based on the defensive mechanisms the plant has to do. So it will give you different results here grown in an indoor setting, in Nevada versus outdoor setting in Hindu Kush region.
But in the same way that we can tie, like, say, I don't know where I come from in the world of time, but it's like, if I take a blood sample or a DNA sample, I should still be able to see the DNA of my ancestors from.
See, but I think that's because they've got a bank of genetic banks. They can test it towards something.
So all I'm saying now is like, yeah, because we had those banks back then. But what if from now on, we as a group, the three of us, we go and get Panama Red, we get the Acapulco Gold, we get the Colombian, we get the Afghans, the Kush, we collect them, we sample those. We have a clear genetic code of Hindu Kush, and then we go to your bag. And we go, let's just take a sample
test it,
and sample and see, can we see that
Seedsman,
code
you guys should do this.
in this at all? Like someone's
come
onto
to the
this. This has to be happening already on some level.
Well, yeah,
because
it's CRISPR projects.
Does that not work like that? Do you think that I could tie it back in some way, form, or?
I don't
Just
think
a
so.
flower. No.
I don't know if the end product though.
I'm thinking the
actual
plant.
The plant,
Yeah,
the plant
DNA
tissue.
from the
Maybe not your
plant.
bag, but
Yeah.
from your tent. You
Yeah.
go and you grab that plant tissue.
Well, and that's where it's like you grab the beans and you're able to test them for authenticity by sending it in for the code bank, and they're like, oh nope, this isn't legit.
It only depends
Or this-
upon
this
them
is
having that information.
93% likely that this is
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like
Right.
even just that. Give me an idea
Right.
of it's like an AI chat detector. To
I don't
tell
feel
if
like that's
somebody
impossible.
plagiarized something. It's the same thing. Yeah, let me know. Give me an idea. And this is something we talked with Swank, a little bit about with the genetic tracking for commercial grows for licensing and stuff, things we may or may not work on.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to make things easier to trace back. The problem is, again, profitability. Everything's about business. And where is it profitable for a company to do this? They'd have to charge you for the testing. They'd have to charge some
I think
seed
that's fair,
bank
though.
to store the stuff. There's got to be.
Well, what you're explaining right now kind of reminds me of Phylos Bioscience.
Oh, ugh,
they
yes.
have
I'm
they
not
have
familiar.
some sort of genetic.
They're trying to have like a bank where they can.
Bank, yeah.
Yep.
So I don't know exactly how they do their testing, how they show their data, or anything like that. But what you're explaining, I think it kind of already exists at
it has
some
to.
level.
Just I think owned by the devil, and I think that's
'cause they were looking to. I don't know if you know that
Patent
story
stuff.
behind them.
I don't.
Yeah, they were looking at patents. They were telling their
that's
investors.
them.
Yeah, they're
this
I
is
do
the one
know
that they
investors,
tried.
we
People
got to
tried saying
spank.
Humboldt Seed Company was pushing with, and they were trying to do it to again. The original thought process was a code, a bank, to be able to store everything and see what
Right,
it is, and
right.
then it turned to we're going to patent the IP on all these.
Right. Can't do, no, you can't
That's
do that.
not okay. And I
But
think
it's got to be done by the devil first.
that's the tough part. If the devil always does it first.
That's
and,
right.
And the thing is somebody will set the blueprint for another person who's like, dude, I'm going to do this. I've
Okay,
got
and
the funds already.
Forget about a patent. I'm just gonna monetize the process.
Yeah.
Like you said, I of course charge to get samples. Of
100%.
course charge for storage. Of
Dude, I
course
would pay
charge.
all day to test my genetics to
Uh-huh.
know the lineage of
Yep.
that. Holy
It just can't be
shit, that'd
exploitative.
cool.
Exploitative. You know what I mean?
That's exactly.
like $1,900
Per sample.
Per sample.
Yeah.
That's
When
where
you-
it would start. You
And
know,
it would make sense at a commercial level. Again,
Sure,
that
sure.
makes there. She's got the problem is you could just go home from your commercial grow and be a home grower now, and then just send it in. They wouldn't know any difference, you
Right,
know. But I guess your name being tested against the database should be something. But it should be if you're a home grower and you're not a licensed commercial grower, my fee's not the same. If you're a commercial grower, I don't know. I guess it's because for profit versus for consumption. You know, it's just we don't have the option yet where they care about us. I feel like there probably is an option for commercial grows.
I feel like it's being worked on. It, like you just said, it makes sense that there's already a version of this, but it's IP, right? So not somebody's not
We can't
gonna-
access it.
Right. Somebody's going to want to keep this tight until they at least have a library of sorts where they can say, okay, this is our product. Check it out. So
Well, boys,
it's in the making. It's in the making for sure.
this could be a from the stash bank over time. Who knows? We got
Yeah.
the three of us.
I'm
and
telling
we're
you, let's go to
passionate as
Panama,
hell, man. Like,
let's do some trips.
well, like strain hunters, man. Yeah,
That'd be
you know,
dope.
shout out to them. I think that's the prime example of somebody who's trying to preserve original pieces of our history of the plant. You
Dude,
know,
I'd love to. No, I wouldn't actually.
I don't want to
wanna
travel either.
I don't want to travel.
No, if
yeah.
we could do AI version and we could travel through a virtual world from home.
Yes, yes. Just smell those turfs. Yeah. Just to let's make a full circle. It's like, what do you think the future of land races are? I like the idea of using them to kind of tie back our genetics. So it's like they're not gone because we need them to figure out where do our cookies come from. Where does insert come from? Right. So it's like that. I see us using them as the foundation to getting more information to how we got to where we are, for sure.
I think you're still going to have the hardcores that are there to preserve it, there to preserve it. And I feel like we're going to be kind of, I don't know, chasing our tail, but like going back, we've done so much hybridizing of genetics. And I feel like people are starting to get sick of it. They're like, oh, people are just breeding for looks and everything's pretty, but it has a cardboard flavor. Go back to land races. So I think a lot of people are going to kind of go back to land races and really use those more in breeding projects. Say, hey, look, back to the basics. Look what we got. We're revisiting this and we're bringing something potentially new out of it. So yeah, I think it'll still stick around, and I think it'll kind of be repopularized every now and then.
I agree.
That's the exact same thought process as I have. I think the accessibility of AI and growing to be able to help smooth these processes out and genetic tracking and all this different technology that's coming into the agriculture as a whole, that's going to make it so we have access to these things on a mass level. So it's like, well, there's a platform that I've bred this out so far and it's gone too far. I can track to see, man, we're 100 genetics out and we're so far away, but I can go get this original one to kind of bring it back to maintain this, but to pull it back to the original flavor. If we have a trusted, vetted process of doing that, I think that's going to revitalize our genetics. Because it's like, we're getting so far out that our magentas are like, what color is, what do you identify what color that is? It's like too much hybridization makes it so we don't even have a distinct, unique category for each genetic. It's candy flavors or OGs.
I also feel like land races are going to play an important role in the medicinal side of things because of that very same reason. Is like everything's so washed out. There's patients out there that need a particular cannabinoid. They need a particular effect. They need a particular plant. And I feel like the way we're going to get there is to get away with the washed out stuff, get back to the particular pheno, the particular cannabinoid, that particular effect, and then go from there and be like, okay, we have something that's potentially, say, cancer suppressing. I don't want to say it's going to just get rid of it, but it suppresses it. So it's like, okay, well, let's find ways that, cancer patient A can get an effect where it's like it alleviates their nausea. Cancer patient B has the ability to recover their cell recovery faster. So it's like that's where I feel like landraces are going to play a big effect, is in medicinal.
Well, and those are the purified versions of it. It's like, again, we're instead of stepping on the bag like everybody does and lacing it, we're going to have it so it's like more pure. And I think the more pure the pack is, the better effect we're going to get across the board. The fact that there's like 15, 20 relevant land races that are put into a bunch of these genetics, it only makes sense that you go so far and you back cross. You know what I'm saying? Like, you go back, and like that's what people do for stability all the time. I don't know why it's not being, and it probably is being done, but people aren't talking about it because it's not as sexy. To say, oh, I brought this back with an Afghani. They're like, why'd you bring grandma out? What? She's old as hell. She's retired. Like, we don't even,
Leave her
we
alone.
dug her up and we're doing another one. I think people just don't get it yet. And hopefully podcasts like this can help enlighten them. We're like, damn, these wheat snobs are saying this about these old 70s, ugly, high times, scraggly looking shit. It's like, no, not those ones. The one's grown better.
But that's where it all comes from, baby.
Exactly. This FTS clip was brought to you by AC Infinity, leaders in garden innovation. Use discount code TheStash15 at checkout to save some money on your order.
From the Stash Podcast.